The Key to the Indian by Reid Banks. Howl of a Wolf, Chapter 15. Silence and darkness. Omri breathed deeply to calm the fear. The air caught unpleasantly in his throat and nose for a split second, nearly making him cough, then struggled into his lungs. It was full of strange smells, so strong they were almost tasteless. The principal one was smoke. He found he was lying on his back. He stared upward. He perceived some light now, but despite the open air cold, it wasn't starlight. A dull reddish glow from somewhere away to his left showed him, after some moments, that far above his head was an arched roof made of bark. As his ears became sensitized to the quiet, he realized there were sounds. Seemingly from several directions at once came loud snores. Nearer, there were other breathing noises, a slight rustle, as if someone turned over in sleep. A nightbird cried. Then, far away, but spine-chillingly, a wolf howled. Omri cautiously rolled over, then sat up sharply. His eyes had adjusted now. Some way down what looked like an endless tunnel, running off into total darkness, he could see a fire burning low. By its faint, ruddy glow, he could see at regular intervals along the tunnel posts as thick as the thickest oak trunk. Between some pairs of these hung things like curtains, but they were not of cloth. One of them hung near him, and he touched it. It was made of some stiff but smooth stuff with ridges, like a bit of paper. He couldn't make out what it was. He felt a draft of cold air. Instinctively he put his arms around his body. Then he looked down at himself and got a shock. He was naked. His first instinct was to hide. He scrambled over to the earth floor and ducked under the curtain. Beyond it was deeper darkness, but he could make out a sort of room with a raised section against the wall. On this was a mountain range covered with fur in the shape of a sleeping giant. Omri stared all around, feeling the beginnings of panic. "Dad!" he whispered as loudly as he dared. There was no answer. Omri felt intensely vulnerable, with no clothes on. Cold air embraced his skin from head to foot. He felt a sudden longing to go home. He hadn't reckoned on this, being separated from his dad, it being night, so dark and cold, so strange, so lonely. He made himself start to think. He was in a longhouse, he knew that much. He remembered reading about the old-style longhouses. He remembered reading that the old-style longhouses were very long indeed, with many families living in partitioned compartments on either side of a wide central aisle, with a number of fires down the middle. This must be Little Bear's living space. He was expecting them. He wouldn't have just left the man doll lying anywhere. He would keep it near to him. Perhaps it was him, lying asleep under the furs. Omri stood up beside the raised section, which he realized was a sleeping platform. The top of it was over his head. That made him try to reckon out how big he was, compared to the people here. If a full-sized person was lying asleep under those hides, he must himself be about 6 or 7 inches high. That gave him a great advantage over people who brought to life plastic figures only 3 inches tall. He needed Little Bear, if it was him, to wake up, to take care of him. What if it wasn't Little Bear? Well, he must take a chance. He ran from one end of the platform to the other, a distance to him about 20 yards. There seemed no way he could climb up onto it. Then he almost bumped into something at one end. A basket, upside down. Standing up close, he could smell it. A flowery, dryish smell, like hay, but sweeter. It was enormous, with little woven braids crossing around its sides like in a pattern. Omri explored it by touch. The weave was stiff, quite strong enough to make a ladder for him. He clambered up, feeling the woody edges firm under his hands and feet. Soon he stood on the gently sloping bottom of the basket, and now there was another sweet smell. Omri recognized it. It was an herb his mom used for stuffing chicken, sage. And here, it was an easy step onto the platform where the mountains of fur were, and he knew at once he was at the head end of their sleeping place, because he could feel against his bare skin a coming and going, warmth, human breath. He reached forward and touched flesh. It twitched. He felt it with his hand. It was a nose. What if it wasn't Little Bear's? He had to take a chance. He moved his hand, feeling the eyelid. The eyelashes brushed his fingers. They were opening. Now he saw the faint reflection of light in the white of an eye. The next moment there was a violent movement, an eruption among the hides. A hand shot out and seized him. He got a terrible fright, and for a moment everything seemed to go black. Then the warmth of the hand permeated his cold body. He heard a familiar voice. "Omri?" The voice was now deep and powerful, a man's voice. Though it was kept low, Omri realized he had never heard or seen Little Bear full size before. "Yes, it's me, Little Bear. I've come." The hand released him, and Omri became aware of the big man lying on his side, looking him up and down. Then he heard a deep-throated chuckle. "You forget to bring clothes." "I had some when I started." "Ah," Little Bear murmured. "Bright Stars must have a plan." He turned over where he lay, shook someone lying asleep beside him, and spoke some quiet words. There was another eruption among the skins, and Omri, looking far up, saw Bright Stars sitting up beside Little Bear, her hair tumbling around her startled face. He shrank down, covering himself with his hands. Bright Stars peered at him, put her face against Little Bear's shoulder, and giggled. She spoke to Little Bear, who said, "Wife says, when day comes, she will greet you and give clothes. Father also have bear skin?" "I don't know where he is," Little Bear chuckled. "I know." He thrust his hand among the furs that wrapped him in Bright Stars, and Omri heard the sleepy protesting whimper of a small child who must be lying between them. The next moment, Little Bear's hand emerged with Omri's dad in it, naked as a jaybird. Omri heard him gasping for breath as if he'd come out of deep water. "Omri, are you there?" "Yes, Dad," Omri hissed back. "Shh, don't shout." Luckily, the shout was a small shout to match his body. Little Bear gently set Omri's dad down beside him. "I've nearly suffocated. I thought I had no face again. I couldn't imagine where I was or what was happening. It was like being trapped in between two damp hot air balloons." "I think Tall Bear was cuddling you under the skin," said Omri. "He needs his nappy changed. God, it's cold out here. Where are we? Why are we naked?" His father always said, naked, as if it were the past of a verb to nake. It was a silly family joke, and somehow it made Omri feel better. He almost laughed to himself. "I think Bright Stars forgot how to put clothes on the man dolls. Or forgot to put clothes on the man dolls. Maybe it was a protest at having to break the taboo and give us faces. Where are all the things we're supposed to bring with us? We've got some spare gear if we could find those. It was you who was touching them." Omri led the way back to the place on the floor where he had first arrived, now that his eyes were used to the dark, though they were stinging because of the smoky air. He could see a shape on the ground. "Look, there they are!" He and his dad fell on the box and the sleeping bags and dragged them under the curtain. Just as when the little people came to them, the things they had brought were in scale, Omri silently thanked the magic as he groped in the box and found a flashlight, the candles, some tinned food, and a couple of sweaters. "How are we going to open these tins?" Omri asked as he struggled into his sweater. "Of course, the tin opener on your knife." "Is the knife there?" asked his dad with sudden anxiety. "Isn't it in your pocket?" "My poor idiot, I haven't got a pocket, have I?" "Dad, that means the stuff you had in your clothes isn't here, the matches." "Nope." A thought struck Omri. "What about the wampum belt?" If we had brought it, it would have been our size or Little Bear's. His. It came from here. How could it bring us and then disappear? It must have got lost on the way. Dad! Don't blame me. I don't, but I bet Little Bear will. The sleeping bags were there, however, and they lost no time carrying them to the foot of the sleeping platform and crawling in. Omri was shivering so much his teeth chattered. "Dad, why is it night here?" "It's the same time difference as always. It must be nearly morning, though. 10 a.m. our time in England would be about 5 a.m. theirs." "So why am I so tired?" "Well, it can't be jet lag, can it?" said his father dryly. Omri snuggled into the sleeping bag, curling his icy feet round each other. His dad said thoughtfully, "It isn't so scary the second time, but I still find that weird sensation, that feeling of going out of much more than just your body, quite unnerving, and then finding myself clutched to that baby's stomach with his hot little hands. No doubt it's just the beginning. I wonder what's in store for us come the dawn." "I'm glad you're with me, Dad," mumbled Omri. "I wish I had my Swiss Army knife." A short time later the wolf howled again, but Omri wasn't awake to hear it. And we'll pause there.